This week on the WriterCon podcast,
I would say my biggest word of advice would be to include a pivot in your story.
Mm-hmm.
So pivot, a moment where things seem to be going one direction and they pivot in a believable way, but end up in an unexpected place.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Rene Gutteridge, best-selling author of over 30 novels and screenplays.
Hello, writers. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined, of course, by fellow author and screenplay writer Rene Gutteridge and our audio engineer Jesse Ulrich. Rene, how are you this week?
I'm good. Had a good week and got a lot of writing done. So that's always
Does
good.
that mean you got a lot of coffee done?
Oh, yeah. Too much. Too much.
And most importantly, when you drank that coffee, it came from what mug?
Well, I mean, I have 3 of the same mug. I'm so into how a mug feels when you are holding it that I have 3 of the same kind. Yeah, it matters, doesn't it, Jesse? It matters.
This is a fake-looking wood one that I saw. I didn't need it, but I bought it.
Well, yeah.
How can you drink hot drinks when you're talking? You've got to have something to hydrate, right?
No, hot's good. Hot tea.
That's why I have my stylish Mr. Toad glass
Very
of water.
Nice. I mean, technically, for podcasters, we are supposed to be drinking water and keeping ourselves hydrated. But occasionally, say if I'm recording something early in the morning, I need the coffee first. So
I used to collect mugs, but now they've taken over all the places where you're supposed to put plates and others beyond. And I think I have and I don't really even use them. So I don't know. You have a few mugs.
Yeah. We have like 3 or 4 of our favorites. And then the rest are just, they have memories attached. And, you know, when you throw it out, it's like throwing out your kid's toy. Like there's a memory attached to it, but it's hard.
I think this would be fun. So for the people watching or listening to this, go to the YouTube channel, go into the comments of this video and tell us how many mugs you have.
Absolutely. We need to know. I need to know where I am on this scale.
Yeah. Are we the crazy ones?
Are we the crazy ones? Yeah. So. Everybody else is like, I only have 5 and that's it.
Challenge accepted.
My guess is I have 20 functional and I don't know how much we have up in the shelf, but those are our display mugs. 20.
I have a lot of travel mugs too.
Well, right. Yeah. Are we counting travel mugs? Holy moly.
That could be a separate category for traveling mugs.
Yeah.
Well, people put out fancy china. Why not mugs, which are really
more
a reflection of your personality, especially if you're a writer. Yeah. Well, I thought we were going to open with WriterCon, not mugs, but whatever.
That's news you can use. That is news you can use. So that's why we're here.
As regular listeners already know, we rebranded this podcast, calling it WriterCon, to match the conference that takes place in Oklahoma City over every Labor Day weekend, which this year is September 2nd through 5th, and it is not too late to register. We have over 60 writers and other experts in the field, publicity and marketing people, fiction, nonfiction, poetry. There are contests, there are chances for you to pitch to agents, to get manuscript reviews. There is so much. I can't even think of it all. Rene, help me out. What have I forgotten?
I don't. I mean, nothing's coming to me, but I know that
lunches.
Yeah. I mean, did you say pitches? Did you say consultations?
That's your department.
Manuscript reviews. Yeah. And tons of fun. I mean, that's just a given. But we're also. I should mention we're really warm. We're warm people. That's one of the things we've been known for, and when we get reviews back, people talk about that. So if you feel intimidated to come to a writers conference, come to ours. We'll make you feel immediately accepted and loved.
I'm not impartial here, but I totally agree. I think WriterCon is more than an event now. It's a community of people working together to help one another achieve their writing dreams. And that's pretty cool. For those of you listening who have registered, you've already seen the email on this, but you can download the whole program right now. It's a Whova app. That's WHOVA. You can see the whole schedule and the speakers and whatnot. For those of you who haven't registered, you can't get into the app, but you can visit our website that has all the same information, including the schedule, and that is writercon.com. What else, Rene? You get the impossible job of after I know, rattle on.
Yeah. Well, I could talk about what I'm teaching.
Fantastic! What are you speaking on?
So I'm teaching a class on how to elevate the entertainment and interest in your fiction.
Yes,
and I think that's something that I see a lot when I read manuscripts. Is the entertainment value of the manuscript isn't quite there. Great plot, great characters. The entertainment and interest level is a little low. So I'm going to talk about 7 ways to do it.
Fantastic. Jesse, you're handling a couple of roundtables. Remind me what you're doing.
I believe I'm speaking at one podcast roundtable, and then I'm spending the rest of my time sort of recording / live streaming, people in between panels.
Which was actually Renee's idea, and now you're going to do it.
You're welcome, Jesse. You're welcome.
Thanks. I'm just going to be throwing cameras in people's faces, and I know many of the introverted writers are going to love that.
Right.
So it's going to be fun.
It's always fun to throw a camera into an introvert's face.
Oh yeah, they love it. I mean, from my understanding, that I've heard from people who live in this house with me, they love it. So.
Anyway, while we're talking about all this writer trips, let me cross-pollinate a little bit and mention to you that we're also starting a series of I don't know what you call them on Twitter Spaces. We're doing spots, interviews. We're having some WriterCon talks on Twitter Spaces. And you can go on Twitter and go to my homepage and look at that, or go on Facebook and go to the Red Sneaker Writers group, and you can find out. And then you can join us on Tuesdays and Twitter Spaces as well, where we'll just talk and talk and talk. Okay.
Bill, you always impress me with how in you are with everything. Like Twitter Spaces popped up, and the next thing I know, Bill's on it. Right. I mean, it's just impressive. I mean, I'm getting on these things when they're going out. Like, finally, I think I'm an overthinker. I think finally I should get on Twitter Spaces, and then nobody's doing it anymore. And so it's a good quality that you have.
Well, it keeps the brain fresh, or something like that. Anyway, interview today is going to be with one of our top speakers at WriterCon 2022, and that is Stephen James. Stephen is, of course, renowned for his cerebral thrillers, but in the writing community, like at WriterCon, he's probably best known for the excellent work he has done on writing itself. Books like Story Trumps Structure, which is just the opposite of my first book on writing, story structure. So probably we'll come to blows or something about this issue. So you want to see that for sure. He's going to speak several times during the first 3 days of the conference. And on Monday at WriterCon, Steve will teach a masterclass with Robert Dugoni on troubleshooting your novel. Not a bad event, I think. And I'll be talking to him about all that later. But first, the news. Well, we still don't have an answer to the question of whether Penguin Random House can merge with Simon & Schuster. I hope they don't keep all 5 names in the name if they do, because that would just be unwieldy. But while we wait for that answer, the book world is buzzing about a new article, which, if it comes true, could literally, I'm not overstating this, could radically alter the way books are published and sold. So L. Griffin, in an article published in Esquire, has reported on authors using tech and the crypto revolution to publish their book. Instead of going the traditional way, selling licensing rights to a publisher, or even the more recent version, people publishing their own work, it's totally different. It's like trying to get people to invest in your book or your series in advance, not just to get rewards. They do that on Kickstarter now, but in this business model, you would actually not just get something in the mail later, you would actually own a piece of the book, like you bought stock in it. And that investment could pay off in the future as the value of the stock increases or conceivably earns dividends. And so instead of spending $10 on somebody's new book, for an author you like, you might spend $100 on an investment opportunity in the book and presumably still get the book. Rene, did I explain that at all comprehensively? Did you follow that?
Well, let me just say this. I'm involved in a movie project that is flirting with this idea even as we speak. And so I thought, my piece in this would be the screenplay, obviously. I thought I should read up on this. I've watched documentaries on, first of all, cryptocurrency, because you have to understand that kind of deal before you even get into the rest of it. And then I watched a whole panel of people talk about this. I think it seems like it could work. It makes sense that it could work. The nuts and bolts of it seem extremely difficult. I don't know how you execute. Maybe a book, maybe, okay, you've got an author involved and maybe you've got some people handling the backside of it. But on the movie side of it, boy, that is a complicated piece of work.
Well, that's why I think it's important that it focuses on digital, technology, digital books, because digital, anything can be tracked. I mean, we know that they can track that even if it's resold, like at a used book. And I think that's another one of the potential benefits here, because in the norm, as you well know, we might get a teeny tiny royalty every time our book is sold the first time in the store. But if that purchaser then sells it at a garage sale or, a used bookstore, author gets nothing. That could change with digital tracking.
Yeah.
Maybe even, photocopying copyrighted work could potentially be tracked, and that could maybe put money in author pockets. Maybe. Yeah. Is it starting to sound Brave New World, or
it sounds, yeah.
Just me?
Just from a technical person's standpoint, why this doesn't need to have cryptocurrency in it involved at all. Like, it could just be investing real money that stays relatively the same price. I understand that cryptocurrency has ways of tracking it, blah, blah, but I would rather trust that investment return, especially now, than a cryptocurrency investment that may or may not be worth nothing when I'm actually able to get something out of it. So
I agree with Jesse, because I think cryptocurrency still is very risky. I mean, according to the HBO documentary that I watched, but So I would agree. I think it's an interesting concept. I think we're going to see it take off. I really do think this is the wave of the future, by the way. I think this is going to happen, and it's going to be problematic, and then those things are going to be worked out, and then it probably is the way the next generation of authors is going to publish.
Could well be.
We should make a WriterCon cryptocurrency. Red sneaker writer cryptocurrency.
Well, that's a fantastic idea.
The writer coin, we call it.
Nailed it, everybody. We nailed it.
Work on that. Have that ready in September. Okay. Oh, I wanted to leave you. Here's one statistic I took out of that article that I mentioned in Esquire. This kind of sponsorship of work had been in place, and back in the day when only Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone had been published, if you'd bought 3% of that, you'd be a billionaire today.
Wow.
So that's a thought.
But in which currency, though?
Well, one that hasn't plunked,
Yeah.
devalued like. Okay, item number 2. So last time we discussed how the debate over the merger of those two houses has basically ignored the publishing world outside of the big 5. Here's another example. 3 authors launched a Kickstarter campaign for a fantasy romance series, apparently a pretty spicy one. But anyway, they've said their initial goal was to reach $10,000. They did that in 3 minutes. As of this recording, they've raised $400,000 to sponsor their next book series. Now, some will remember back when Brandon Sanderson did something the same thing, more elaborate, and made something like $42 million. And that's better, but I wouldn't turn down the $400,000 that they raised on Kickstarter. Rene, I trust your judgment. Would you consider launching a book this way?
Well, I've already admitted in our last podcast that I nearly flunked my economics class. So I don't know if anybody would want to
torture you. I led with this story.
Yeah, I mean, could I be trusted to handle $400,000? Well, probably. I wouldn't turn it down. I think Kickstarter's always been a strange thing. It goes great until it doesn't, and I think if they can get these books out and do well with them, I mean, obviously they've built a community, which we were talking about last show. That's how you get people to invest this amount of money. And I think it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more writers doing this for sure. Jesse, have you ever backed anything on Kickstarter?
I backed a couple things, some of which I forget about until they come out.
Right.
It's usually a lot of technology things, but I think listen, people, if I'm wrong about this, put it in the comments. I'm pretty sure Mystery Science Theater 3000 did a Kickstarter to when they got canceled by Netflix to make new ones on a new platform, and I supported that, and now get emails from them all the time every time a new movie's up. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. But not books. It's books.
Not yet. I mean, I have friends who paid into the Brandon Sanderson one.
Really?
I wish I did, but they also don't like to keep a lot of things that they get. So I'm hoping to get some of the knickknacks from that handed to me, because they don't want their house to be full of clutter. And I have less problem with that if it's nerd related. So,
right.
As long as it's not mugs.
Yeah, I don't want another mug. Yeah. Hey, I invested into a Kickstarter once, and it went terribly wrong. They never
mugs. Oh.
No, it was pre-Apple Pencil, and it was an Israeli tech company. And I thought it was a genius idea, and then Apple beat them to it. So, and they kept asking for more money, and it didn't go well. But anyway, it was I thought, if I'm going to do it, I only did it once. That's the only time. I've only gambled once too. It's just like try everything once, just see what will happen.
People listening might hold you to that, but we'll never know about it one way or the other. And I think that anyway, it's time to move on to the interview, I think. So my interview today is with Stephen James, a veteran of this podcast, the author of Story Trumps Structure and many fine novels. Steve, thanks for joining us. Steve, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Now, this is my traditional first question, so I probably asked you this last time, but I figure someone with your depth probably has a pocket full of answers. So here it comes again. If you could give a writer, aspiring, published, whatever, give a writer one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think it's probably changed because my view of story has actually kind of changed over this last year. So I would say my biggest word of advice would be to include a pivot in your story. So pivot, a moment where things seem to be going one direction and they pivot in a believable way, but end up in an unexpected place. And I think that as I've been really thinking about story over the last year, I don't think a lot of people really teach the pivot, and I feel like it's pretty vital. So yeah, I would say make sure that you're maybe not a twist, maybe a twist, whatever, but pivot into a new, unexpected, but inevitable direction.
Right. Do you pivot in your books, Rene?
I do. I love to pivot.
Yeah.
I'm a pantser, so it's just, in my nature to just suddenly pivot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anything either, so yeah.
You pantser or planner, Steve? I don't remember.
I just completely am organic the whole way through. Like, I don't know where I'm going to go. I've never started a book where I know how it will end. So yeah.
Yeah. And well, Bill's outnumbered here today because Bill's an outliner. And we'd love to discuss this. Yeah.
And yet somehow you come up with a finished book that makes sense. I don't understand that. That wouldn't happen for me.
I don't understand how plot out something that doesn't exist yet. And so I've never understood, how do you outline something that doesn't exist? So the only way I would understand is like to write a book and then be able to like, oh, now I can write an outline because now it exists. Yeah. So it seems, I don't understand it.
For me, and you guys you're not going to tell me because none of you outline, but when I do it, the outline doesn't really map out the plot so much as it says, this is what happens next. Ben goes to the courtroom. Ben calls the coroner, just to keep it moving forward. But the details and eccentricities and of who did what and exactly why, that usually kind of even when I've written something that it changes once you start filling out the chapters. I mean, that's what you're saying, is that everything changes, right?
I've tried to like say, I'm going to outline a scene. Like at the end of this scene, here's what I want to happen. And I can't even do that. Like, so I can't do a scene. Like they always end up completely looking different. So like, I'm like, I don't even try a book because it would just be a waste of everyone's time.
When I started writing books about writing, my first one was story structure, because I thought this is something everyone needs to understand and is fairly infrequently taught. You, on the other hand, have written a book called Story Trump Structure, which is like the exact opposite, which explains why you're a keynote at WriterCon, because I always invite people who disagree with me.
Well, there you go.
What do you mean by that, Story Trump Structure?
Well, it doesn't matter to me how many acts you have. If you tell them in the specific order that they happen. Like I've heard a lot of people say, a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm like, so does a bratwurst. Like that's not a story. Like I don't know exactly how that helps me. And so what I believe is that pursuit matters more than structure. So pursuit lies at the heart of all great stories, because a character faces a struggle and begins to pursue something that he either wants or wants to avoid, and so on. And so whether that happens in 1 act or 3 or 5 or 7 or 9, it doesn't matter to me. Whether it happens chronologically, it doesn't matter as much, because some amazing stories have been told in unique ways, right? Telling it backwards or whatever. So yeah, so for me, I try to really dive into the idea of pursuit. Yeah.
But the best thing outlines ever did for me was remind me about pacing, if you know what I mean. Because my first novels, for instance, were mystery novels. And too often in mysteries, somebody gets whacked at the beginning. That's interesting. It gets solved at the end. But the middle tends to be, and then the detective talks to this person, and then they talk to somebody else. And then you know what I'm saying? And it can be repetitive. But outlining, being able to look at it and say, No, that's like 3 interview chapters in a row. That won't work. We need to have a chase or something to break it up. And that's useful to me.
Yeah.
But you probably don't need that. You're just doing it instinctively.
Well, I feel like the more you understand what lies at the heart of a story, the less you need to outline and the less you write by the seat of your pants. So like when you really understand the movement of a story from kind of the orientation, disruption to escalation to transformation, kind of the movement of a story, and you look at the different moments within a story where different types of things happen, I just don't feel like it's as vital outlining what happens to me. Well, first of all, I can't follow it even if I try, but what happens to sometimes is I feel like they become predictable, like stories do. And like, oh, okay, end of act 2, I know what's going to happen now. And I always like to tell stories in ways that people don't anticipate. And they're like, I never saw that coming. And it's because I never saw it coming, because I literally had no idea that was going to happen. Like, I wrote the book. Like, how did you come up with that twist? I'm like, oh yeah, I just thought of it. But no, it took me a year to think of the twist. So it's like, if I don't know how the book's going to end or how the story's going to end, probably it's going to be harder for readers to guess it as well. So yeah, yeah.
See, my version of that would be I'm reading or writing this, and I think this is getting a little slow. Stop. What would be the weirdest, most unexpected that could happen right now?
Yeah.
His wife pulls a gun on him or whatever. And then I write that. And then, of course, you have to think of some reason why that makes any sense at all, which requires a lot of going backwards. And
yes.
But now, Rene, Steve and I, of course, are writing a lot of thrillers where pacing, of course, is critical. You've what are you, more than 30 novels, 20 novels and 30 books? Where are you?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
But not necessarily thrillers. So is pace
Right.
as critical or what? I mean,
absolutely, pace is critical. I write thrillers, but I also write comedy. So pacing and comedy, of course, is, same idea. You've got to suddenly pivot. You've got to come up with the thing that nobody's expecting. And so the free flow of that for me, it works better in the way that Steve's describing, just because I can come up with the unexpected twist that nobody is expecting. Nobody's dying, but there is some sort of comedy punch, so.
There are plot twists that don't involve murder? What?
There is, as a matter of fact. But speaking of murder and psychological twists, okay, so Steve, you have a chess themed series. And before we get into that, I want to tell you, my father-in-law, who has since passed, but he was a huge fan of the series, and he could not wait for each of these books to come out. And I was telling Bill that there, for a whole several years, we would get one of your books for his birthday and one of Bill's books for Christmas. And it was back and forth. And I was just praying every year that one of you would at least have a book. And please just keep up the pace of writing these, because that's what my father-in-law wanted. Wow. It's the only thing he wanted. So thank you for several years of birthday presents. But so this was an intriguing series. And I read a few of these at least. I might have read the whole series. I can't remember now, but it's been a while. But these chess themed books were excellent. Where did you come up with the chess theme?
Well, I had this idea. At first, I was like, I want to do a story about a one-armed detective. That was my outline, basically. And I didn't end up with any of that. But I did come up with this FBI agent who basically tracks serial offenders like serial killers, arsonists, and so on. And so the first book was going to be called The Pawn, like the chess piece, The Pawn. And I thought, man, I kind of want a way to frame this series, like to make it memorable, and also people can gather, hopefully collect all the pieces. So I said to my publisher, what if we do like the pawn, the rook, and the knight? And then we can always add more if we need to. So they liked the idea, and we ended up going all the way through the chess pieces. And then I wrote Opening Moves, prequel, and then Checkmate, the last one. They're like, we want to keep going. I'm like, we did Checkmate. Like, literally, where do you go after Checkmate? So I ended up doing kind of a spin-off series with the same character, but kind of drop back in time. So I did 3 books there. So there are 11 books in the whole series. And
That's amazing.
But yeah, it was fun, and I love the character, and who knows, maybe we'll revisit him sometime soon. We'll have to see.
Well, what's fun about that, we should point out to our listeners, is that when you are pitching, you've got, one book idea with a whole line of ideas to come after it if it does well. And something like this, a publisher will grab onto because it's so easy to market, right? I mean, these chess themed books. And
I think it was easier for, the next book's going to be the Queen, I guess. So you do the King. It's like, but some people are like, you have the most boring titles for your books. I'm like, well, On the Rook tonight, the Bishop, King, Queen, checkmate. I'm like, they're like, you need more exciting,
No,
titles.
I didn't think so. We could all keep up with it in our house for the, birthday presents. We all knew what was coming next. So
your publisher probably wanted the Deadly Rook or something like that, or the Treacherous Bishop or whatever. I'm sorry, are you about to say something, Rene? I think I cut you off.
No, I was actually going to ask about his research, though. How do you do your research?
For me, research has become a big part of the books that I do. I really want them to be authentic as much as possible. So I did a lot of research with the FBI. I went to the FBI Academy and toured it a couple of times. I didn't actually attend it myself, but I did visit a couple of times and toured the Pentagon, met with scientists, researchers, DEA agents, detectives, and really found that I enjoyed all of that. Like I never would, 10 or 15 years ago, if you would have said, oh, would you? I was like, I don't want to do research and stuff. But I've just met the most amazing people. And for the most part, everyone has been really just giving with their time to talk about, specific details as far as investigations and techniques and how the FBI works and all of that. Yeah, it was really fun and a lot of work though, like reading up on criminology and criminal theory and stuff. I mean, I probably could have gotten a degree in criminology with all the books that I had to read in that area.
Is it just me, or do you feel like you're constantly, one, having to keep up with the increasing challenge of being abreast of crime fighting technology, and two, trying to come up with some exciting plot that is different from the other cajillion thrillers out there whose plots seem to be getting exponentially bigger with each entry? I mean, at some point, when I wrote this new book that's hovering over my head right now, wrong side, but plot, counterplot, I was just trying to think, okay, where haven't I gone? And then where hasn't anybody else gone? We've seen serial killers, we've seen the world on the brink of apocalypse, and just trying to come up with something that was, I thought, really fresh. That's challenging. Do you think so?
I mean, it's tough. Story ideas aren't as difficult for me to, like, I have so many ideas that I want to write, but yes, avoiding what's been done, avoiding what I've done, in the past, that's important to me. Like I wanted every one of my stories and that series and other books since then to be original and not just to be derivative. And so I wanted each one to have the same core characters, but very different storylines. And it definitely is a challenge to come up with and to make sure that it's, believable, authentic, well-researched, original, fresh. I mean, yeah, it's definitely a challenge for sure.
So let me ask you this. A lot of writers are always interested in how other writers work. So are you a morning writer? Are you, what's your day look like when you're working? How do you handle your hours?
I usually try to get started early in the morning, and I don't write a number of words per day. Like people were like, how many words a day do you write? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me try it out and see. So like, couple of years ago, one day I was like, I'm just going to write and keep track of my words. So there were 6,002 words that day. I'm like, that's amazing. I'll write my book in like 2 weeks. This is so awesome. Why haven't I done this earlier? So then the next day I spent 10 hours on the book. And when I got done with the book, or well, not the book, but when I got done with my writing day, I had 6,003 total words for the 2 days. So I wrote one word that day in 10 hours. Yeah, like because I would rewrite stuff, edit and change but literally one word. And I was like, all right, this isn't going to work for me. So I just discarded the whole words per day thing because it was too discouraging, and went to like hours per day. So like I might say I'm going to write for 5 hours today, or 6 or 4 or 10, whatever it is. And then I actually have a clock. I just start my timer in the morning. And if I take a break for coffee, I'll stop it. Or if I check my email, I'll stop it. So it's tough to get hours in that way. I mean, a lot of people will just keep counting it whenever they go to the bathroom and check the emails and stuff like that. But I'm very fanatical. Like, I'll stop it. So if I can get 5 hours in by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that's a really good start for me. Because I usually have to get up, started at about 5 or 6 to do that.
Okay, I just got to stop you here for a second. Yeah. This is amazing to me. You're telling me that you have writing days of 10 hours. The longest one I ever did was 18 hours in one day. That was a hard day. That
were you at the end? Were you thinking, I can finish this? I can finish this.
It was hard. So, but usually what happens for me when I work on my book, when I get toward the end and I'm working on the end of the story, it's really important for me to keep context in mind, because I don't always know how it's going to end, right? And so like I'll start at the beginning of the book in the morning and go through it, maybe not proofreading it or editing every word or something like that, but going through and rereading the book until I come to the new stuff I'm working on. Then I'll work on that and then maybe type in changes. And so I try to work in the mornings and take afternoons off, and then I usually try to come back at it in the evenings again. But when I'm really trying to finish the book, I usually take like a 10-day retreat and try to write 100 hours in 10 days. And so at least it's crazy, but I really just dive into the story and try to see it unfold toward the end like that. Not every day. Yeah, I mean, it just varies.
That's cool.
I've had some long days.
That's great. Well, so tell us. Well, I'm sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to segue into WriterCon, but predictably,
so you do it.
Great minds. Obviously you are coming. You're keynoting at WriterCon this year, and plus you're on a couple of panels and doing a couple of smaller. I mean, in terms of length, not importance. But anyway, talk a little bit about what you're doing at WriterCon this year.
Well, as far as I'm looking at my schedule, I'm pretty full. I'm doing a lot of seminars and
well, you're there.
Yeah, I mean, I said, okay, look, I'm going to be there. I don't want to sit in my hotel room, and I think you took me seriously, Bill. So, but anyway, so I'm looking forward to sharing, some of those seminars, and then also I'm teaching with Bob Dugoni on Monday. So we're doing kind of like a one-day intensive seminar too, and
troubleshooting your novel, you call it, right?
Yeah, it's like I wrote a book called Troubleshooting Your Novel a number of years ago, and I really want people to be able to identify issues that they have with their story and then analyze them and fix them. So we're going to be very practical. I mean, there's some theoretical stuff as far as like what is a story and how does a story work and all of that, but really try to say, okay, look, how can we help you as practically as possible really shape and improve and elevate your story? So that's what we'll be doing on Monday.
It sounds like it's pretty interactive. Am I right about that?
Well, some of Bob's teaching, like we'll alternate, the two of us will. And so sometimes we will do more interactive. What I want to do is give people tools that they can take home on their own time and really apply. So like, I'm not going to spend the next half an hour working on your story or something like that. I'll say, here's what we're going to do. No, you can do this at home, but we're going to keep going. And so give you as much as you can in one day, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you're also talking on the story cube. You want to give us a hint what the story cube is?
Well, you see, that's my change in my view of what a story is. I have a master's degree in storytelling. I've read a lot of books on writing and storytelling, written to. on the topic and taught for almost 30 years on story. And over the last year, my view has changed of what I feel like is vital in a story. So I'm going to be talking about the 4 aspects of every story and then the 2 additional aspects of every great story. So if you want to look at a scene, you can look at these first 4 elements. But then if you really want to elevate the scene, you'll include all 6. So every scene, every act, every story as a whole would really focus on these this cube, these 6 aspects. Yeah.
And your other talk, I don't remember which day, but it's on the schedule, which you can see on the WriterCon website, by the way, everybody, WriterCon.com. The title is something like What No One Is Telling You About Characterization, right?
Yeah. It's like a number of years ago, I was studying improv comedy, and the teacher was really talking about switching status, which is something I'd never really heard taught at a writer's conference before. And so I started to really study what this was. And status is really in every interaction, someone might have or be vying for higher dominance or status, like in this case. So it isn't so much social status. It's more like substantive in that scene, who is calling the shots and so on like that. And so I've really come to believe that understanding, managing, and developing these ideas in relationship to status is one of the huge keys to characterization. So I'm really going to unpack that in practical ways for the writers there.
I wish I had heard that about 30 years ago. What were you thinking, Rene?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm always interested in hearing a new technique and a new way to think about character. So that sounds amazing.
Well, you've been dealing with the. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really interesting. When you start to watch people in interactions, you can start to understand status moves, high status moves, and lower status moves. And when you start to watch movies, you'll start to keep track of what they're doing to manage their status. I mean, just a couple of quick hints. Like, first of all, stillness is power. So when a character pauses, it elevates his status because he's in control of the situation. So, like, just on a practical sense, maybe you've seen like a movie where there's a murderer on the loose. The lady comes out of the house and she's just sprinting across the yard, trying to get away, looks back. He comes out, he's just walking slowly, right? She's sprinting, through the forest. She's running half a mile away. And they show him again. He's just like walking like this. So suddenly she trips, she falls, looks up. He's in front of her. How did he get in front of her? I have no idea. He was walking, she was sprinting, but there he is. But they don't show him sprinting because it would actually do what to his status? Actually lower it. And so to make him scarier, they slow him down. So like there are just a lot of super easy techniques that writers can use to manage status and to either create more frightening villains, more heroic protagonists, and so on. So yeah.
That sounds fascinating.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that Rene, for instance, is handling all these manuscript reviews and private consultations that we do at WriterCon. But this sounds like your session with Bob Degoni is going to be like the jet-packed version of that. How are those coming along, Rene? Everything on schedule?
Everything's on schedule. Everybody's super excited. So I think we're going to pull this off, Bill. I think it's going to happen. They
get their choice of reviewer or consultee, right, from a list that you've assembled, and then they can do whatever they want. And Steve will be, yeah. Well, you did. I don't know if you feel the same way, Steve, but when I go to conferences, I really, that it drives me nuts when I'm scheduled to do one thing and then the rest of the time I'm just going for a long walk or something. I mean, I'm there. Use me, for Pete's sake. Yeah. So, and you're coming in on early on. So yeah, I scheduled you all over the place.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, it's fine. That's really what I enjoy doing. If I'm going to be somewhere, I would rather be interacting with people, teaching, leading a seminar or whatever than, standing off to the side. So when I go in, I usually tell people, it's like, as much as you got, let me know. and I'll do my best to fulfill it. So,
well, we don't often get to have somebody with a master's in storytelling, so that's exciting. It's unusual, and I love that about you, and I'm glad that we get to share in your knowledge.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Back in the day, I moved to Tennessee to study storytelling in 96, I guess. Finished it in 97. And I think at the time there were like 60 of us in the world that had a master's degree, in storytelling. And so it was the only college in the world that offered it. And we studied oral storytelling, but I also try to understand what lies at the heart of stories, whether they're told, whether they're written, whether a screenplay. Yeah. So it was really fascinating. Yeah, it was fun. I don't know if I'd do it again, but I'm glad I did it back in the day. I can't believe it's 25 years ago. My goodness sakes.
Wow.
I know, 25 years. Wow.
You do a bunch of these conferences, Steve. What keeps, because I'm pretty certain you could figure out other things to do with your time. What keeps bringing you back?
I never really thought that. I never really thought that I would love teaching writing. Okay. So my parents were both teachers. And I was like, I'm a writer, I tell stories and so on. But then I found that I was at an event and and I could just see someone's eyes light up, and you're just like, okay, they got it. They understood what I was just teaching. And I liked that. And so over the years, it's been just encouraging for me. Writing, this is kind of a lonely, long haul. I mean, every book that I write, it's like 1,000 hours of solitary confinement is what you're confining yourself to for every novel. So getting out of my basement and realizing there's a world there, and then being able to share with people, I don't know, it kind of gets me excited and thrilled to be able to do that.
Yeah. And people always say writing is the loneliest profession because writing is, but fortunately, writing isn't the only thing we ever do. I think I'm always amazed that whenever writers get together, like we're going to at WriterCon, we always have mounds to talk about, lots to catch up on. Everybody likes everybody else, and yet it doesn't happen unless there's an event. So that's another reason I love WriterCon and coming.
Gets us out of our caves
every year. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Well, Rene, any more questions before we round this off?
I don't think so. I loved hearing about it. I loved hearing about your research, Steve. I'm also a fan of research. In fact, I have a Quantico sweatshirt.
Oh, fun.
Yes, a prized possession of mine. I have some homicide mugs from Oklahoma City, homicide. So, but you're right. Research really opens up a lot of storylines that you wouldn't normally go down when you start talking to folks. So I think I can't emphasize that enough for writers to do your research. No matter, it doesn't have to be in thrillers, by the way. If you're writing, about a bakery, you should go to a bakery for a day and see what it's really like. So
I think I should go to a bakery and get some donuts.
We should all go to a bakery right now. And I'm sorry I mentioned that because now I'm going to be thinking about it. So apologies to all of us for that.
Sounds like a plan. Hey, Steve, thanks for being back on the podcast, and we will see you very soon at WriterCon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to seeing you all and joining you down there in Oklahoma.
Okay. Bye-bye for now.
All right. Well, that was fun, and we want to loop back around to WriterCon and remind everybody it's writercon.com to register and get more information. We have authors, we have agents, we have editors, book marketers, author assistants, which is interesting, and over 70 sessions. So this is a major writer conference that really can take your writing and your career to the next level. WriterCon.com. Bill?
And I will shamelessly admit one last time that during the summer hiatus, I had a new thriller come out. It's called Counterplot. And, check it out and see if you might enjoy it. And that would be, I in the podcast every week saying, keep writing. See, I take my own advice. And so here's the latest. All right. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.